Hello and welcome to the CNN-IBN special Leader Talk, where we discuss leadership mantras with some of the most successful sportspersons and corporate leaders in the world. Joining us today on Leader Talk are two very special people. Anil Agarwal, founder and executive chairman of Vedanta Resources, one of the more remarkable business stories of India in the last couple of decades, and David Gower, the charismatic former England cricket captain. Appreciate both of you joining us. It's wonderful to have two of you because I can't think of a more contrasting pair in many ways. Mr. Agarwal, you, for example, started life in a very small school in Patna. You start life in the Sir Ganesh Dutt Patliputra school. You complete your schooling, you don't go to college, and you come to Mumbai as a scrap metal dealer, or a kabadiwala as they would call it almost. And you end up setting up one of India's biggest companies, $50 billion worth. Where did that hunger come from, I've often wondered, to get to where you have?
The fire in the belly, that's the important. You never stop. As you go, you unfold and you find something is happening. I have fundamentally remained always in the resource business. I always got into the cable to raw material of copper and aluminum, look for the opportunity in the copper smelter, look out for the resource, and ultimately find that India is the most resource country in the world. But nothing is happening in India.
But you didn't go to Harvard Business School. You didn't go to, you didn't do what many today want to do, send their children to Wharton, Harvard, and thereby become business leaders. You did it the hard way. I mean, as a scrap metal dealer coming up the hard way, do you believe that leadership is built sometimes because of the struggle?
If you look at the history, if you look at the Akbar, yes, he can't write his name. And he was the most, between Hindu and Muslim, most charm and most leadership quality. So is the question of, with your experience, with the, the two things I always remember, the nature is very important, how it gives you direction. It gives you, and you go in that direction, and always remain one thing, to service. Completely detached, remain focused, and that's how it works.
I'm going to come to that, whether it's money which drives you, or profit maximization, or whether you go according to where your heart takes you. But Mr. Gower, on the other hand, you had a very different start in life. You were seen as part of, you were the golden boy of English cricket in the late 70s. You become a test player at 21, which is young for an Englishman. You become a test captain by 27, 28. Was it easy in a sense for you to therefore make that transition, that you didn't have to face perhaps some of the tough days that Mr. Agarwal had to go through? Was it all too easy for David Gower?
I would never claim it was all too easy. That would be slightly wrong. It was probably much easier. I think the key thing actually is whatever drives you has to come from inner self-confidence. If you are dealing in scrap metal and you're turning your business from that into $50 billion worth of multinational business, somewhere lurking underneath is a self-confidence which says, basically, I know what I'm doing. I know how this works. And you have to kind of portray that, I think. If you're going to become a captain or a leader of anything, people see through you very quickly. If you don't have that innate self-belief and an ability, therefore, to convey that what you think has a great chance of being right, then you'll find it hard to lead. I mean, for me, it was a question, I played, to be fair, it's very different as you say, I played sport for fun. It suddenly became a business, it suddenly became professional, and I had to learn a radically new approach to it.
It appeared to me that the game came so easy to you that perhaps you didn't have to go through the struggle of having to play this game. The self-belief almost seemed to be there right from day one. Would that be a fair way to look at it, that you didn't have to go through the sort of constant self-doubt that many other cricketers go through?
Well, I can compare myself to a very different character again, Geoffrey Boycott, who drove himself because he came from a much different background, a much less privileged background, drove himself to become as good as he could. Now, he built up a technique, and he could dismantle a technique. So the technicalities of the game, the technicalities of batting, he could tell you every one of them. Mine was a very different assembly route. It just sort of seemed to build naturally and things happened. Therefore, I don't have the same ability to deconstruct when it comes to that point. Therefore, if you're trying to lead people, you have to do it more by instinct than technique, if you see what I mean. Therefore, sometimes it's hard to understand someone who doesn't have that.
So leadership for you was instinct?
It had to be.
It had to be because of the kind of person you were.
Well, you have to stay true to yourself. I think that's part of the thing. People, if you change or if you try and be something you're not, again, people will see through that.
Was leadership for you something that came by instinct naturally? Did you see yourself as a natural leader right from the start? You wanted to be an entrepreneur. You didn't want to work for someone else in a sense. Did it? Because, as I said, you had no formal training in business leadership, and yet you became this formidable business leader, Mr. Agarwal.
No, I was always little bit insecure in the beginning and little nervous and little bit less confident, so that I was always on the toe. But I also always used to benchmark myself with my next person and how I can be better. And I used to see all his quality and I used to duplicate with him. And that's how I built step by step.
You know, the reason I'm asking you this is because perhaps you came to this big city in Mumbai or Bombay as it was then. You had all these big names in industry. You had limited knowledge of English, as you've often said. And yet you were able to compete with them. You've spoken about fire in the belly. Did you at any stage feel, you know, I may not be able to do it. How will I ever be able to compete with all these big names in industry?
You know, when you don't know anything, you do better.
So every day was a new day.
Every day is a new day. You have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose and you don't know the end game and you keep moving. And the fundamental was that I knew that India has a tremendous, I remained focused on my business. I never changed my business.
Did you at any stage say, by this year I'm going to be, my company is going to be worth this much, 10 years down I want to be this much? Did you always think 10 years down the line, or were you thinking about here and now?
Here and now. Always remain, because you change. As you move, you change. I can't even imagine how the big is.
Did you on the other hand, Mr. Gower, as someone once who played for England, think about statistics, where I want to be? I want to be rated as one of the greatest players who's ever played the game. Was that the driving force, or was it simply that I've got this God-given talent, I just want to enjoy it?
Probably to my cost, I didn't set targets like that. But in the same way, you go day by day. So on a given day, your initial targets, if you keep them simple, I mean, in cricket, it's very straightforward. If you're a batsman and you're aiming to get 100, you take it in segments. You go 10, 20, 30 and onwards. And if you keep your mind clear, as Mr. Agarwal obviously did as well, keep your mind clear and focused, you will make those little targets and you will get to the eventual target, because it will take care of itself. And therefore I think the concept of dreaming of, say, 10,000 test runs or whatever it might be, unless you focus on the steps to get there, that will remain an unreachable target.
Because, you know, when you became England captain, one of the criticisms was David Gower's too laid back to be a captain. And I often wondered, was it simply because the game came so easily to you? Does a leader have to show on a cricket field, for example, this constant aggression, this belief that you're there in the face of the opponent?
No, the trick there is that if you can maintain a certain calmness and a sense of control, then people respect that. And then if you need to be angry once in a while, because then people wake up, then people listen. So if you need that fire in the belly, if you need that eruption of emotion to wake a team up, if you do that 3 times every session, it'll become useless because they've seen it before, heard it before, and that's that. So you need to have that up your sleeve, I think. But I think for the most part, people want to think that the man in charge knows what he's doing, that he's got a clear head, that he's thinking straight, and that it's all under control. Not that he's ranting and raving and waving his arms and exploding at every God-given second.
You now have a global empire, stretching from Zambia to Australia to India. You're all across the world. So it can't be one individual, surely, who today can run a multi-nation conglomerate. You have to empower also. All your CEOs must be empowered to do what they have to do.
Absolutely.
And you set them hard targets?
They set their own target. We motivate them. We inspire them to up to limit that you are no less than anybody. That's how it works. And if there is anything, I'm there.
So you're there only as an advisor, as a guiding force, is it? I've often wondered that in a cricket match, because you've got 11 players playing the game. How much can a captain do to win a test match? Isn't he ultimately dependent on the other 10 individuals and how they perform? Do we sometimes exaggerate the importance of leadership on a cricket field?
Well, let me put it this way. Yes, you do rely on the other 10. If you have 10 very good players alongside you, captaincy becomes much, much easier. If you've got the best team in the world, then you could almost sit back and say, well, just sort yourselves out, and you'd probably win a game. Where captaincy really does count, though, is where you've got less resources. When you have fewer resources, then you have to make them all work that much better. And I think then you see the great captains. I mean, I played under two at the start of my career for England. Mike Brearley for England, Ray Illingworth, who had been England captain for my county side, Leicestershire, both of whom had that quality where you just recognised that they knew what they were trying to do and they could get the best out of people.
Let me take a break at this point. There's plenty more to talk to gentlemen on. Leadership mantras on Leader Talk. Much more with David Gower and Anil Agarwal after a short break. The future of India in terms of leadership is more in small town India than the big city.
Absolutely. You will see all the best sports player, if you see the scientist, if you see the businessman, if you see the best people who will take the position and move forward, will be from the small town.
Welcome back. You're watching Leader Talk, where we are discussing leadership mantras here on CNN-IBN with legends from the field of sport as well as corporate leaders. Anil Agarwal, chairman of Vedanta Resources, and David Gower, former England captain, are with us. Mr. Agarwal, many would say that we only see one side of you as a businessman. You've tried to consciously now move into the field of corporate philanthropy. You've worked with Anganwadi workers. Your companies are pushing for tribal education. How much of that is only to ensure that the image of the company remains, and how much of that is what you believe leadership should be? That leadership should not be confined just to the company and the profits that you have, and it should also serve society.
That's the ultimate purpose. Anything you do, if it doesn't help the society, I'll not do it.
So business leadership is not just about profit maximization, because you've often faced criticism. You've known it, for example, in your Niyamgiri plant that you set up, where there was this entire tribal movement, and you've often claimed, look, I'm actually also helping tribals with education, providing them jobs. How do you wrestle with that as a leader? Is it about profit maximization, business leadership, or is it about contributing to society?
No, we never flouted, but we are the largest democracy of the world. And I understand that. We are not China. We govern by the people. And I understand the psychology, but to coming out your overall, I'm very clear in my mind. I'm very focused on child care program, and I see the amazing India as a vision. 1,29,000 crore government allocate to make sure the 50% children of India is a malnutrition. And I'm going to put, after a couple of years when I retire, most of my wealth must go for the service of the people. We have seen from the past, the Bidlas, the Tatas, we have seen how they have been philanthropic. But as I look at the American model, I look at very much American model. If you look at 5 people built America. Now, with you call Rockefeller, JP Morgan, Wendell Waits, Carnegie Mellon, or Mr. Ford, all of them has built America, and they have in their lifetime, they have given back everything to their society.
There's a feeling sometimes that, today's leaders are individuals who also can be, every individual somewhere is thinking about himself. When you were captain of England, were you conscious, you went to India, for example, in 1984, 85, tough place to go and tour. Were you conscious that part of your role is mentoring, creating another generation of English players, taking them along with you, because you had a young team which eventually became very successful?
It was an extraordinary tour, an absolutely extraordinary tour for all sorts of different reasons. And to come out on top was very, very satisfying. And we did have players who were new to the environment, were new to the England team. So 2 environments, both the England team and Asia. For them, it was an eye-opening tour. And that's where your experience comes in. That's where the ability to try and remain calm. I mean, let's face it, we had 2 assassinations. We had all sorts of things going on during that tour. Political upheaval, tough cricket to play. And you needed someone, and you need some allies in this. You can't do it by yourself, but you need to stay calm.
You make an important point, need to stay calm. What is your recipe to stay calm, Mr. Agarwal? Over the years, as you said, you've seen the ups and downs of life. What is it, that makes you stay calm and stay the course? Is there a Hindu philosophy that you turn to, or what is it that you turn to when you perhaps are facing a big business battle, a corporate battle? How do you stay calm?
One is that is all in the mind, and I think the patience is the most important thing. You have to have patience when you work in the countries like we work in India, Africa. The patience is work, but
So the Chinese don't need to be patient because
they don't look at the vote. What they decide, yes, they move on.
But you make a good point that in countries like India, if you're working in Africa, these are countries where you have to work with governments as a business leader. Being able to stay the course and be patient, you're saying, is extremely important in such societies.
Yeah, see, but government is weak. Everywhere government is weak, you have to take public with you.
It's a bigger test in a sense to be a leader in India perhaps than in many other parts of the world, particularly in the world of business. But let me ask you both in conclusion. David, you first. What is it, if there was one quality that you would see in a leader on a sports field in particular, or any field, but particularly sports, what is it that stands out for you? When you look at cricket captains today, many say Mahendra Singh Dhoni, for example, is a captain who's remarkably calm through even success and failure. What's that one quality you're looking for? Is it calmness, or is it a certain quiet determination?
I think confidence. I think if you can exude confidence, that spreads, that's infectious. So if you look as though you know what you're doing and believe, and it helps if you believe it, then others will pick up on that. And if you have that confidence, that will work its way around a team.
I'm going to ask you, Mr. Agarwal, in conclusion, there's an entire young aspirational India which is coming up from Patna, from small town India. One of the big Indian stories in the last couple of decades has been the emergence of small town India. What is it that you'd like to tell that small town India? You started by saying fire in the belly, but beyond that, what is it that they need to do?
Make sure that what you do, 100% remain focused. And with the power of, you are a leader. When you lead, you have to have a power of ignorance. You have to have a power of diplomacy. And I have worked always with the ordinary people and make them extraordinary. And that's how you inspire.
I'm going to ask you that. Is there something that a small town boy today has a little bit more fire in the belly than the boy in the big city, the metropolitan kid who's got everything for him? Is there something you believe that the future of an India in terms of leadership is more in small town India than the big city?
Absolutely. You will see all the best sports player, if you see the scientist, if you see the businessman, if you see the best people who will take the position and move forward, will be from the small town.
Fire in the belly, David, did you?
You can't live without it.
You can't live without it.
You have to have that something that drives you on. Again, for me, through all these years, I've had to try and convince people that there's something there. There is that steel. There has to be an underlying steel that makes you compete. Because again, going back to these many, many things you need to be successful, you need to be able to compete. You need to be able to drive yourself.
Well, both of you in your own way have been men of steel. You've shown it in different ways, but you are deep down inside men of steel, which is why both of you are leaders, and it's a pleasure having you on Leader Talk. Thank you both, Mr. Anil Agarwal, David Gower. That was another episode of Leader Talk with two very special people. This series will bring together leaders of the corporate world and the sports world to discuss their leadership mantras. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.